Mystique, death, chimeras, automatons, illicit drugs, bicycle couriers, anti-war factions, and plagues are all pieces of the elements that make the Grand Dark so great. Stick around.
We interrupt our program with a special bulletin. An unidentified object has been spotted in orbit around the Earth.
Greetings, invaders. My name is Scott. Today we'll be talking about The Grand Dark by Richard Kadrey. Just look how beautiful that is. It's just so gorgeous. Richard Kadrey, if the name sounds familiar, he's the author of the Sandman Slim series, as well as books such as The Everything Box and The Wrong Dead Guy. Sandman Slim, which I have not read yet, but I plan to. Everything Box I have read. Everything Box was a great kind of haphazardly novel that takes something like Good Omens mixed with like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Well, there's a box that contains the apocalypse, so to speak, and an angel comes down and gets punched in the face by some guy and loses the box. And different factions want to try to take it so they can prophesize the apocalypse. Anyway, it was great. But today we'll be talking about The Grand Dark, which is a really great novel. I really enjoyed it. It's a very kind of a dark European urban fantasy kind of thing. I enjoyed it a lot. Let's get into it. So in the book, chapter 1 starts off with our main character, Largo. And Largo is in his 20s, I suppose, who was raised by a kind of scavenger of a father and a panhandler slash pickpocket of a mother in this town of Lower Brajava. And so he knows all of the streets and back alleys where his father had hunted for scraps to sell. And he talks about how he took him on runs to different places. So he knows the neighborhoods, he knows the city very, very well. You know, one of those things where he just knows where to go, knows each single path because he's been living in there for so long. And his girlfriend, whose name is Remy, she's a performer in this kind of macabre acting troupe where they reenact deaths and murders and things like that. And so the two of them are living in Lower Brajava, kind of working paycheck to paycheck. They're both addicted to a drug called morphia, and they just so happen to have cocaine in this world, which is, like, morphia is a fictional drug, but suddenly they talk about cocaine. So they're very much into the illicit drugs, which plays a part into this role. So Largo works as a bicycle courier in this world, so we don't know that there are self-driving cars, and there's automatons that can drive you around in taxis, but he works for a bicycle courier company, just known as the Company. And the book, chapter 1 starts off with the lead courier has disappeared, and there was talk that he was spouting anti-war propaganda, and so this mysterious faction of the government took him away. So Largo gets then promoted to lead courier, and that starts off on chapter 1. And then chapter 2, so chapter 2 is called The City, the Air, and I'll read you the first paragraph on how this world starts off. A haze, perpetual and gray, hangs over much of Lower Brajava like a murder of crows frozen in flight. Below, the coal plants dot the city, smolder and roar, rolling black ribbons of soot into the atmosphere. There, they're caught by the wind and distributed throughout the city. The dust settles everywhere, on the rich and poor alike. Of course, the wealthy have the means to sweep their streets clean, as if soot wouldn't dare to venture into their districts, grinding the windows and tower rooms that overlook the roofs of the less fortunate. The dust invades homes, offices, churches, drifting down chimneys, snaking through cracks in window frames under doors. They throw the soot into the sewers, where it mixes with the city's waste and drifts into the sea in a black tide that stains the hulls of fishing boats and smuggler ships alike in a uniform gray. People call the colors city silver and laugh it off, because what else is there to do? So that's where we are. We're in this dark gray German kind of setting. The author, Richard Kadrey, tweeted out a picture of the Charles Bridge in Prague. I'll throw up a picture here, which was the inspiration for the main location of Largo when he's bicycling across the opening chapter of this book, which really kind of sets the stage. There's maybe some gargoyles on tall buildings. There's a cityscape that's stretching. There's churches and spires sticking up into the gray atmosphere. It kind of reminded me of the movie Dark City. That's a movie in the late 90s or so. So it kind of felt like that. It was really immersive to me, and the way that these places are named and the places that Largo goes really sucked me in, and the world building on this is really great. Throughout the book you get interspersed chapters that are things like interviews, travel brochures, or like instructions, recordings, or accounts by people throughout the book, so that gets a very colorful overlay onto the setting, onto the world, onto the history of the world from these different accounts, and it was very well done. I loved it because it didn't break apart from the plot. It didn't do a giant info dump in the middle of some chapters. It played really well with the story and sprinkling this different kind of color onto the whole world in general. So in this book it describes things like automatons, which are called maras, and maras can be like your maid, your servants, the taxi drivers. There's also things called chimeras, and they're described sometimes as chimeras that go out at night and just eat the trash that's on the ground. So instead of street sweepers, they have chimeras that kind of eat things, and I assume incinerate it in their metal bodies. And there's things called iron dandies, who are people that have like prosthetic limbs or face masks, or they talk about these iron masks that they wear because their face is disfigured from the war. And those people are then, treated by the government and given this kind of baseline housing. Thank you, Yard Crew. So it's a very colorful book. There's lots of elements. So hopefully my camera battery doesn't die again, but in summary, I really enjoyed this book. I love the rich world building. I love the interspersed chapters of these other rich accounts of the world from different perspectives. I loved Largo's kind of journey from the everyman to now not so much the chosen one, but now the guy who's planning to tear it all down. He goes from kind of a weary, scared kid who gets picked on to now being the empowered, kind of brave warrior who fights for what he thinks is right, and he goes after the biggest players in town. And so the journey starts off into this giant climax where he takes on, he joins up against these anti-government factions, and they kind of take on the big guy. So I really love the character arc of Largo. I really love the world that this is set in and the richness in which it's presented. So I really enjoyed it fully. And so if you want something a little bit different, a little bit of a Eastern European kind of urban fantasy thing, set in some fictional metropolis where there are these automatons and chimeras and giant government things who are building humans whose skin can illuminate and project things. There's talks about a circus that he sees in town, about these hairless cat-like creatures whose skins have like fireworks going on underneath of the skin, which are like these robotic creatures. There's like a fortune teller, a magician. There's all these kinds of really weird circus-y type things throughout this environment, and it's all played just in such a rich environment. So if you like that kind of immersive thing, if you like some kind of dark urban fantasy, then definitely check out The Grand Dark by Richard Kadrey. I would highly recommend it. So those are my thoughts on the book. Check it out. If you like more of these type of books, be sure to like and subscribe. If you would like a free audiobook of The Grand Dark, then go to audibletrial.com/bookinvasion, sign up for a free Audible trial. You'll get a free credit. You could check out the book, download it, and it's yours to keep forever, and then cancel your trial. No big deal. But I would appreciate it if you do that. The link's down below. Thank you for watching, everyone, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.